Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma alimna ma yanfa'una wanfa'na bima alamtana wa zidna ilma. Allahumma la sahla illa ma ja'awtahu sahla wa anta taj'alul hazna idha shi'ta sahla. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma alamtana إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين لله تعالى. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to continue with our study of this book, The Critique of the Palmyran Creed, Deconstructing Ibn Taymiyyah's Theology of Resemblance. I was asked a question that I wanted to address about this book. I was asked why I'm reading this book instead of something related to obligatory knowledge. Because people need the obligatory knowledge. And this is true. So the answer to that question, number one, we already read more than one book related to the obligatory knowledge. So if you've been following us over a year or more, we've read many books. And between myself, Sheikh Abdul Rahman, Sheikh Walid, we've taught obligatory knowledge related to belief, obligatory knowledge related to al-fiqh, and obligatory knowledge even related to spirituality in different books. And all of those videos, they are posted on our YouTube channel and on our Facebook page. So if you can put the link where people can subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can follow, there are many classes, let me see, on that YouTube channel. And there is a playlist with so many classes, like a lot. When I look at this, I say we did a lot of things on here. Imam Haddad, Scattered Thoughts, Tafsir, Nasifiyya, Tahawi, Asharis, Ihya, Minhaj Abidin, Al-Adhkar, where's Sulam al-Tawfiq? An-Nujum al-Lamia, Sulam al-Tawfiq lessons are not on there. I don't see them. Well, we need to fix that. And we're going to go back and try to reorganize this some kind of way. But there are so many lessons there. So one can follow a lot of those lessons. And we'll be doing more books and related to the obligatory knowledge. But also, this particular book would help us understand issues that we're confronted with that are not covered in the obligatory knowledge, right? In detail. So while we talk about those essential matters, we also want to learn and teach about issues that are pertinent to us every day, but the details to unlock those matters are not available. So that is why we're covering something that may seem advanced, but may seem advanced, but we want to make them accessible. So you're going to notice that we do a lot of things. And everything that we're doing, there's a reason why we're doing it. It's not like just aimless. So we're talking about this book about Ibn Taymiyyah. Why are you talking about that? Because the ideas and the assertions of Ibn Taymiyyah are widespread in our communities, right? And many people are influenced by those ideas, but they don't know it. That's what we call default Wahhabi, right? When we say default Wahhabi, that means the person has these concepts, but they don't realize it, right? They're not actually card-carrying Wahhabis. No, but they got the Wahhabi ideas. So they're following Ibn Taymiyyah's ideas, for instance, but they don't know who Ibn Taymiyyah even is. But all of their ideas are the ideas of Ibn Taymiyyah, right? So they think those ideas, because of what has been pushed on them, are Islamic ideas or are the way of the Salaf. They don't realize these are the ideas of Ibn Taymiyyah, and the Salaf are free from them. So by explaining these things, people will become aware. You follow? So we're making clear different things. And now remember, there's two sides of this coin real quick. There are people who are, so we got three issues to cover. Y'all ready? One, you got issues coming from non-Muslims that are well-known non-Muslims and in the society. So those issues need to be tackled, that we deal with in the society from non-Muslims, concepts, cultural practices that affect us. And we have to learn about how to overcome them and how to protect ourselves from them. That's one. Then you got within Islam groups and people of misguidance. They claim to be Muslim, whether their claim is true or false, and they present ideas that are foreign to Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. So we have to address that, right? That's another layer. Then there's another layer that are people who are Ahl Sunnah who are extreme in their ideas. So we have to deal with that. They're Ahl Sunnah, but they're extreme, right? And the Prophet ﷺ, he told us, beware of extremism because it destroyed the people who came before you. So some people are extreme. So extreme to the point that they think they're the only Ahl Sunnah and everyone else is misguided who's not in their group. There's that level too that you have to deal with, right? Then you have another level, another layer, that they're Ahl Sunnah, but they're racist. So you got to deal with that. So we got all these things we're covering, and we try to give each of it its proper attention. Did someone catch all that? Those those layers? The layer of the non-Muslim, the layer of the misguided person in the name of Islam, the layer of the extreme group that is Ahl Sunnah, but they are extreme, and the layer of Ahl Sunnah that is racist. So these are all the different things we're dealing with. So y'all messed that all up. So we put it, number one, you got those issues and ideas from non-Muslims. Number two, you got those issues from groups of misguidance in the name of Islam. Number three, you got Ahl Sunnah who are extreme in their ideas. Then number four, you got Ahl Sunnah who are racist. Right? So those are the four levels. And we got to deal with all that stuff. So we deal with all those issues because we're confronted with them all. And they may all get mixed sometimes depending what we're talking about. All right, so that's clear. Inshallah, let us begin. We're on page 19. Bismillah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. The author, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy on him, said, so in summary, Ibn Taymiyyah believed that the Quranic method is only one of detailed affirmation and general negation. The reason why he believed that it is with detailed affirmation was because he wanted to avail himself the opportunity to affirm what was mentioned previously. He believed that it was perfection for Allah Ta'ala. As for him believing that the Quranic method was one of general negation, it is because he wanted to close the door in front of his opponents and prevent them from negating these deficiencies from Allah Ta'ala.
So we talked about it. Ibn Taymiyyah wanted to establish for Allah a direction, a limit, a place, and attributes of jismiyah, anthropomorphism. So the way he did that was through affirmation of attributes literally, and the denial of going into detail and negating. So he wanted to have some form of resemblance through confirming attributes in the literal sense. But the way of Ahl Sunnah scholars were a balance between the two. And that is the Quranic way, between sometimes detailed affirmation, sometimes detailed negation, right? Both a balance. And if they lean to one, it was more a detailed negation than affirmation, based on the verse, Laysa kamithlihi shay. Now,
Ibn Taymiyyah's principle, therefore, was motivated by reaching a particular objective and was not one based upon knowledge. He essentially developed this principle to accomplish a goal that he had in mind, and did not derive his principle after copious reading of the verses of the Quran or Sunnah. The Quran declares Allah Ta'ala's divine transcendence in both general and specific terms, and it affirms Allah Ta'ala's attributes in both general and specific terms. Hence, there is nothing found in the Quran that prevents a detailed negation when there is a need for it, just as there is nothing therein that prevents a general affirmation.
here, so if you read the books of our scholars, you're going to find a balance between affirming attributes of Allah and negating attributes of Allah. Like yesterday, when we were reading the book Shar Hadith Jibril by Habib Zain bin Ibrahim bin Sumait, you'll notice that when he talked about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentioned the attributes that are related to Allah, and he mentioned 41. He mentioned 20 that were obligatory, 20 that were impossible, and one that is permissible. So you had an affirmation equal, a negation equal, right? And then what is permissible, right? So this is, you'll find this in the books of the scholars of Ahl Sunnah, and this is the way of the Ash'ariyah. And then sometimes you'll see in some creeds where there is a detailed negation of non-befitting attributes, more than an affirmation of attributes of a kamal. And then you'll find this balance where he mentioned it here. Let me point to it real quick. He said about Allah, mutasifun bikuli kamalin munazzahun anin naqsin, and a naqs wama qatara bil bal, that Allah is attributed with all attributes of perfection, proper perfection, and clear, transcended above any deficiencies, and whatever one is imagining in one's mind, what one imagines in the mind. So that's a balance of affirmation of perfection and negation of deficiency. Now,
You are aware that Allah Ta'ala negated some deficiencies from himself in detail, as he said, He begets not, nor is he begotten. He likewise issued a general negation when he said, and there is nothing comparable to him. He affirmed complete and general perfection for himself when he said, Allah Ta'ala, there is no God but He, the living and self-subsisting, just as he negated in detail when he said, neither sleep nor slumber overtake him. When the Jews ascribed stinginess to Allah Ta'ala, he refuted them in detail by saying, may their hands be tied up, and may they be cursed for what they said. Rather, his hands are outstretched, spending however he wills.
and this yadahu here indicates Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's generosity.
This principle that was
So
innovated by
you'll find that if you read Ayatul Kursi, you're going to see this affirmation, affirmation, negation, affirmation, negation, affirmation, negation as a balance. Now,
This principle that was innovated by Ibn Taymiyyah was only promulgated in order to in order to reach his goal and fulfill his desires. The scholars, however, believe that detailed negation is correct, just as they believe that general negation is correct, because every imperfection that occurs to the mind and which is subsequently affirmed for Allah Ta'ala must be denied and explicitly negated as such when there is a need for that. After all, what does it mean to negate a child from wife? I'm sorry. After all, what does it mean to negate a child and wife from Allah Ta'ala? Is that not a detailed negation done in order to repudiate the claim of those who affirm it? The commentator on the Palmyran Creed took notice of this from afar in his commentary on Ibn Taymiyyah's citation of the verse establishing the so-called principle of general negation. He begets not, nor is he begotten, and there is nothing comparable to him. He said, the point of evidence in this second verse is that Allah Ta'ala negated any similitude, meaning likeness, equal or one similar to him. He negated similitude and resemblance in general here. Hence, it is a general negation. The point of evidence in his is in his statement, and there is nothing comparable to him. As for the statement of the exalted, he begets not, nor is he begotten. It is from the realm of detailed negation, because he negated a specific attribute. This verse is outside of the dominant principle, which is that the Quranic method is one of general negation. There are two reasons for this. The first reason is that the Jews and idol worshippers ascribed a child to Allah Ta'ala, so Allah Ta'ala rebuked them and specifically negated this attribute. The second reason is that having a child or children is an attribute of perfection with respect to the creation. So it was negated from Allah Ta'ala, lest it be imagined that He is ascribed with it as well. Thus, even though it is an attribute of perfection for the creation, it is still an attribute of perfection that is connected with imperfection. This is the reason why this verse is not included in this principle, and it has a few other similar exceptions. We have just a, we have some we have some observations to make regarding this. Firstly, Ibn Taymiyyah said that the method of affirmation is one of detail. In its outward apparent sense, there is no obscurity in that. Where we differ with him, however, is concerning what he wished to affirm in detail. He wanted to affirm a direction, whereas we negate it. He wanted to affirm a limit, whereas we negate it. He wanted to affirm a locus, whereas we negate it. He wanted to affirm movement and contingent things subsisting within the divine entity, whereas we negate them.
Please highlight this issue, right? Highlight this point. Because things are made known by their opposites. Please put that. Things are made known by their opposites. Put that in there, please. And everyone copy it. Things are made known by their opposites. What do I mean? Why am I saying things are made known by their opposites? Right? Because many people fall into bad beliefs because the callers to bad belief disguise themselves under the names of the people of truth. So you'll hear someone say we're all Muslims, and they're not paying attention to the differences in beliefs. They're just going with the outward name Muslim without the creed that makes one a Muslim. So they don't understand it. So here the author points out distinct differences between Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah among the Ash'ariyah and Maturidiyah and the ideas of Ibn Taymiyyah, which were carried by the Wahhabi and Salafi movement. So he said, Ibn Taymiyyah, he took this position of detailed affirmation to get to an aim. He had a certain mindset that he wanted to convey. So these principles that he wanted to convey by this way, Ahl Sunnah totally reject. So he wanted to establish al-jihad, a direction for Allah. And Ahl Sunnah, they negate direction. So if you want to know the difference between al-Wahhabiyya and al-Ash'ariyah wal Maturidiyya, and the ideas of the Wahhabiyya have their root in the teachings of Ibn Taymiyyah, is to affirm a direction to Allah that is negated. Allah is not in a direction. So that's one issue, right? Please put the issue, the direction issue. That's one. Then he mentions they want a had or a limit for Allah, that Allah is contained in limits, by limit. Ahl Sunnah, al-Ash'ariyah wal Maturidiyya negate that. Allah is not contained by a limit. Right? As Imam Tahawi said, Ta'ala Allahi anil hudud. Allah is clear of limits, exalted above limits. They want to establish location or place for Allah. And Ahl Sunnah negate that. Right? These are distinct differences in creed from Al-Wahhabiyya, so-called Salafiyya, and Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah among the Asha'ira and Maturidiyya. We negate direction, limit, and place from Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. While Ibn Taymiyyah and those who followed his ideas try to affirm a limit, a direction, and a place for Allah. Is this clear? There's no way to escape this. These are distinct, diametrically opposed belief systems that cannot be joined. Do y'all follow? Is this clear as the sun on a noonday? So we don't believe the same thing at all. Right? And that's the thing. People forget this. We don't believe the same thing. We share some common beliefs. We do. Al-Asha'ira wal-Maturidiyya and the Wahhabiyya, we share some ideas, some beliefs are the same. But some core beliefs about Allah are diametrically opposed. We don't believe the same thing at all. And there is no way to join between those beliefs. There is no way to join between those beliefs. They cannot both be right. One is wrong and one is right. And it's our decision as an obligation to inquire and learn to determine which is right and what is wrong. Every morally responsible individual has to know that. So sometimes people be like, why is he so pushy about these ideas? We don't believe the same thing at all. Right? So it's not in these core issues. Then also Ibn Taymiyyah, he wanted to affirm movement to Allah, descent and ascent. Al-Sunnah negates that. And this last one, Hulul Hawadith fi Dhat, is a little complicated. That Ibn Taymiyyah, he believed that created things can dwell in the self of Allah. That's a little bit complicated issue. We'll talk about that later. Because he believed there were al-hawadith that don't have a beginning. There are created events that don't have a beginning. Because it fits his belief. That's complicated. We'll talk about it later.
Secondly, his statement that the method of negation is one of general negation is not conceded to. There are two angles we can take to explain this. The first angle is by saying that we could be in need of a detailed negation in order to refute the false notions of certain innovators and heretics, such as those who imagine that Allah Ta'ala is stingy. Consequently, we negate stinginess from him in detail. Similar for those who affirm a direction for Allah Ta'ala, we negate that from him in detail, just as he negated having a wife or a child from himself.
No.
The second angle is by saying that the word ambiguous.
So here is a point that should be mentioned. Detailed negation may be necessary depending upon the issue that is being expounded upon. When someone is saying something that has layers to be negated, then the detailed negation is necessary. Now, so for instance, when someone says Allah is in a place like above the throne, there's going to be detailed negation for many aspects. Number one, why is that negated? Just to give you an example. To be in a place negates Allah's attribute of al-qidam. How? Because it entails that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changes according to created things. And that which changes, that is the most significant sign that that thing is a creation. Whatever changes, that change is the most significant sign that that thing is a creation. And that which is a creation cannot be eternal without a beginning. Number two, being in a place suggests this need, which negates Allah's attribute of al-qiyamu bin nafs, non-neediness of others. Also, being in a place contains the attribute of having a limit and being contained by that place. It also has the indication of al-jismiyah, because the place is a created element, and that which exists in the place is also a corporeal body, which is negated. So you see all of that from one belief, all of these detailed negations. Did y'all follow that? Is it everyone with me? Now, go ahead.
The second angle is by saying that the word ambiguous, mujmal, is a technical legal term well known to the scholars of usul, legal theory.
Al-usul is usul al-fiqh. So you have different sciences that come into understanding the religion. Among them is the methodology by which religious rules are extracted. That is called usul, al-usul, or usul al-fiqh.
As such, it is not possible to act upon it due to its need for a specifying evidence. According to Ibn Taymiyyah, however, the term mujmal is an adjective of negation. He said mujmal negation. In saying this, Ibn Taymiyyah posited that negation itself is general. However, the general is not the same thing as the clear and specific, mubin, and the non-specific cannot be acted upon since there is a lack of clarity concerning its meaning, its intended meaning, or what applies to, it. So in reality, Ibn Taymiyyah believed that the negation cited in the Quran, such as the words of the Exalted, "There is nothing like unto him," is not unequivocal, muhkam, and that rather it needs clarification from elsewhere. He took the same view regarding the words of the Exalted, and there is nothing comparable to him. It is for this reason that he did not find any in difficulty bringing details that negate these noble verses, saying, for instance, that Allah Ta'ala possesses a limit, and that He is in a direction with spatial contact, that contingent things subsist within His divine entity, and
Here,
other
so
things.
despite laysa kamithlihi shay, that nothing resembles Allah, despite that explicit verse in the Quran, Ibn Taymiyyah, despite that, still found a way to attribute to Allah many resemblances, like limit, like direction, like location, like created things and dwelling in the essence of Allah. Now,
That contingent things subsist within his divine entity, and other things that, in their apparent wording, contradict these verses. Yet, since according to Ibn Taymiyyah these verses of negation are general, They cannot be made the sturdy pillar that is relied upon in this area of discussion, and neither can they close all arguments. For this reason, he brought all of the detailed affirmations that he imagined, and that is why he said that the affirmation should be detailed, as we explained earlier.
So if you follow, we would think that Laysa Kamithli Shade is sufficient to wipe out any of those ideas. But because of this concept of brief negation and detailed affirmation, he was able to take in his own thinking verses that would normally be negated by Laysa Kamithli Shade and affirm them and qualify Laysa Kamithli Shade, make those verses absolute and make the absolute verse of Laysa Kamithli Shade conditioned upon the affirmation of the apparent meaning of those other verses. Mm.
The truth regarding this matter is that the negation found in these verses is a universal, kuli, or general negation. The negation is unequivocal, and it is obligatory that it be acted upon. It is neither general nor does it remain inoperative until there is further clarification. That is because the general is clarified, and the general negation is clear cut in its context. Therefore, regarding these verses that Ibn Taymiyyah said are general and unclear, our scholars, the scholars of the people of truth, say that they are unequivocal, explicit, and obvious, and are in no need of added clarification. These verses are the ruling according to us, whereas with Ibn Taymiyyah, they are nothing more than general or ambiguous negations.
So here, Al Sunnah, when we read ليس كمثله شيء ولم يكن له كفوا أحد هل تعلم له سميا, right? These verses are equivocally and clear in negating any resemblance between Allah and His creation. As for Ibn Taymiyyah, they are brief, but they need detailed explanation. They are brief, and they need to be qualified by other factors, which is the way he affirms non-befitting attributes to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. So you would think that a person says, Laysa kamithli shay, and he still attributes non-befitting attributes to Allah. It's because of this. Does everyone follow that? I want to make sure that didn't go over no one's head. Y'all with me? Allah. It takes a little thinking, but it'll all connect, inshallah. Okay, go ahead. She said I missed it. Just hang in there, Najma. You'll get it.
In truth, it must be said that these verses contain a detailed negation and not a general negation. The detailed and encompassing negation, meaning the negation that is clarified, cannot be contradicted by the illusions that appear to some of the innovators due to their ignorance or vain desires. For this reason, our scholars did not see any contradiction between the detailed negation and and what has appeared in the Holy Quran. Rather, according to them, this was in agreement with the Quranic method, as opposed to Ibn Taymiyyah and those who incline towards him.
So Ibn Taymiyyah, to an extent, is disqualifying the words of Allah Ta'ala. No, conditioning him upon his imagined concept of Allah. So I won't say disqualifying. He's conditioning those explicit verses, making them brief to establish the false concept of Allah that he has in his mind.
The method
That's
that
what he had because he passed away.
The method that Ibn Taymiyyah claimed is neither the prophetic nor the Quranic method. Rather, it is the Taymiyyan method. The Quranic method is to affirm for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in detail what is unequivocal, and to negate in detail and comprehensiveness every deficiency that does not befit him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thirdly, ponder over the words of the author of the commentary upon the Palmyran Creed. This verse is outside of the dominant principle and his statement, and it has a few other similar exceptions. Here, he clearly admits that this verse is outside of the province of Ibn Taymiyyah's principle, and he acknowledges that there are other verses similar to it. Whatever has similar exceptions to something else shares in the operative clause, ilah, and comprehensive ruling. The basic rule is that, if this is the case, the ruling is all encompassing and general. That being the case, why didn't Ibn Taymiyyah say that? The statement of the commentary upon the Palmyran Creed that it has a few other similar exceptions is unacceptable, and what he and his sheikh call general is not really general at all. Rather, it is comprehensive, detailed, and clear, and is therefore grouped among similar verses and is one of them. These similar verses are not irregular, anomalous exceptions, lest it be asserted that they cannot be used as evidence. They are congruous with the principle of comprehensive negation.
Hmm.
Fourthly, regarding his statement that begetting a child is an attribute of perfection that is connected with imperfection,
Hold on
it
one
would have
second.
been more.
1 second. 1 second. 1 second. Okay, go ahead.
It would have been more appropriate to say that it is relative perfection, Kamal Idafi, and not absolute, meaning that it is perfection when attributed to a
Idafi.
human,
Kamal Idafi.
Kamal Idafi, and not absolute, meaning that it is perfection when attributed to a human and not perfection for every existing being. Our
All right,
scholars,
here I need to put this point in case. Perfection can be perfection towards a human and perfection towards Allah. Perfection towards Allah, right, is not the same as perfection towards humans, right? So sometimes you can have an attribute or a quality that's perfection to Allah and it indicates deficiency in the human being, right? So when we say perfection, we should only apply what is perfection to Allah, not to the human beings. And there is no analogy between the perfection of human beings and the perfection of Allah. So what is necessary, a perfection, an attribute of perfection in a human being can be an attribute of deficiency to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is an important concept. Do y'all follow that? Because what Al-Wahhabiyya do is they take attributes of perfection to human beings and they apply them to Allah, which is a fallacy and a mistake. What is necessary, a perfective attribute in a human, is not necessarily a perfected attribute to Allah. And even if the wording is the same, the meaning of perfection is different in relation to Allah than in relation to the human beings. Okay, go ahead.
our scholars have declared that it is obligatory to affirm for Allah Ta'ala every perfection that does not contain any imperfections. They did not say that any type of perfection must be affirmed for Allah Ta'ala. On the
Here, you hear that
contrary,
point? We cannot say that any perfection is always attributed to Allah. La. There are some attributes of perfection towards humans that is not permissible to say Allah. To have a healthy, strong body is an attribute of perfection to the humans, which is kufr to say about Allah, right? To have a strong, healthy, well proportioned body is an attribute of perfection to humans. If you apply that to Allah, it's kufr. To have a sharp mind is an attribute of perfection to humans. To attribute that to Allah is kufr. Naam.
on the contrary, they emphatically stated that it is the absolute perfection that must be affirmed. You see that most anthropomorphists do not understand the principles of divine oneness, and that is why they go astray and lead others astray, all the while considering themselves to be doing good. Similarly, they do not possess mastery of the intricate sciences that are relied upon in gaining deep understanding, such as the science of legal theory, usul, grammar, logic, the sciences of stylistic imagining, imagery, and rhetorical devices, and other ancillary disciplines. Excuse me. You see them drowning in their darkness, and it is not easy to make them understand or to explain them, because they are not prepared to understand clear speech, not because the speech of the scholars is weak.
Allah. That's an important point, and we'll stop there. Uh, Sometimes some of these concepts that we're talking about, they entail uh, other Islamic sciences. You start, okay, tell you. Okay, Allah, a lot to forgive. Let me see. Are there any questions about what we talked about that need to be clarified? Let's try to, everyone is good, fine. But if there are brief questions about what we covered, uh, we'll clarify them, inshallah. You're funny, free slave. Allah. Tayyib, we clear? No questions. Good. All these things need review, right? And go over them. But do y'all see a clear distinction between Ahl Sunnah and these ideas of Ibn Taymiyyah, which are relied upon by Al Wahhabiyah? I hope this thing is becoming clearer and clearer to you as we go along. Tayyib, I guess we're done. Inshallah. All right. Today is Wednesday. All right, may Allah reward you all, inshallah. Please keep me in your dua, and I will keep you in my dua, and inshallah, we'll see you if Allah facilitates. Today may be difficult, but if I have time, we'll do Post-Fajr Reflections, inshallah. Barakallahu fikum, wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.